Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk bugle, it's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's bugle 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
if you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
And you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record button?
I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? The Elk Talk Podcast is brought to you by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, ensuring the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. To become a member, go to rmef.org.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by Mountain Ops, making outdoor energy and performance nutrition to make you a stronger and healthier elk hunter. They have a full line of hunting-related supplements, including meal replacement shakes, multivitamins, pre-workout fuel, and post-workout recovery. And my favorite, their new performance protein bars that, by the way, are packed with 270 calories and 20 grams of protein, but contain less than 6 grams of sugar. Visit mountainops.com to learn more and to order, and be sure to use the promo code ELKTALK to save on your next order.
The podcast is also brought to you by Gerber. Go to gerbergear.com and learn about the knives, the Vital, the Big Game Vital, the Gator Premium, all the things that we use when we're out in the woods, and not just knives, but also some really cool multi-tools that they have.
And we have a promo code for Gerber as well. Just use the code ELKTALK to save 20% on your orders at gerbergear.com. And we are also brought to you by Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. And Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls is the original designer and inventor of the pallet plate diaphragm that's completely changed the way elk calls are made and used. And to find out more and to order your elk calls, go to RockyMountainHuntingCalls.com or BuglingBull.com and use promo code ELKTALK, and you're going to save 15% on all of your elk calls and elk call accessories.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by GoHunt.com. Go to GoHunt.com and sign up for the Insider. The Insider is changing how hunts and hunting information are found. No doubt about that. Use promo code ELKTALK, and when you sign up for the Insider, you're going to get $50 of store credit, mad money, in their gear shop.
Lastly, the University of Elk Hunting online course is a proud partner of the Elk Talk Podcast. And within the University of Elk Hunting online course, you're going to find nearly 60 chapters organized in 17 modules of elk hunting instruction aimed at making you a more successful elk hunter. From planning and e-scouting to calling strategies and packing, every imaginable elk hunting topic is included in the online course. And regardless of your previous elk hunting experience or success, I'm confident the University of Elk Hunting online course will make you a more confident, more successful elk hunter. Just visit elk101.com and use the promo code ELKTALK to save 20% when you sign up for a membership to the University of Elk Hunting online course.
And with that, Corey, we are ready to get into it.
Let's jump into it.
Morning, Corey.
Morning, Randy.
How's life in Idaho?
If it was any better, well, I don't know what I'd do.
Darn, I thought you were going to lay some great line on us here.
I was trying to think of one. I was like, if it was any better, I'd have to move to Montana or something. But I think it might even be better here than in Montana.
Well, if you like lots of wind, right now would be the day to be in Montana. I saw Dorothy and Toto fly by the window here. It's I don't know what the deal is. I come home for 2 days in between trips, and the wind blows so hard it just about blew the paint off my truck last night. But,
wow.
Oh, well.
If you see the paint from my truck, end up over there. We had the wind yesterday and the day before, so
yeah.
Actually, the paint from my truck's all on the brush from September, so I can't blame that on the wind. But
you ever try to hunt elk in this kind of wind? I mean, we're talking today, we probably have 40 to 50 mile an hour winds here. Have you ever had any luck hunting elk in this kind of wind?
Those are two different questions. Yes, I have tried to hunt elk in those kind of winds. No, I've never had any luck.
Well, when we were in Colorado last week, season open on Saturday, and I'd looked at the weather forecast. Saturday was supposed to be this perfect day, and by noon on Sunday, the winds were supposed to get between 30 and 40 miles an hour. So I had the same experience as you've had in hunting in high winds. So I was in a pretty big hurry to try shoot something on Saturday rather than Sunday.
Yeah,
I know. I hate fishing in the wind, and I hate hunting in the wind.
Yep, and fishing's probably worse in the wind. At least hunting, you can move around, and fishing, you're just stuck there in the wind and can't get out of it. We hunted Wyoming a couple of years ago and had a couple days of just intense high wind, just that 30, 40 mile an hour sustained all day. Mm-hmm. And you can't hear any bugles. Nothing's going to be out moving. And, we kind of figured out which direction the wind was coming from and then found a couple pockets. Like the elk have to be getting out of the wind. So let's figure out what the elk are doing to get out of the wind. And once we did that, we got into a couple little basins that were a little bit blocked, more so from the wind. Mm-hmm. And we were able to actually get a couple bulls bugling. Of course, you have to be in pretty close. And they weren't super anxious to come into our calls. And, we talked about that a little bit, that I think just that wind being so strong and unpredictable, their sense of smell, which is what they rely on, is not as effective. Yeah. And so I think they hunker down and they're not as willing to take a risk and come into a call.
Yeah. No, I don't know what it is, but whether it's deer, elk, antelope, I guess antelope, I've had better luck in the wind because they're so fickle. They just go to the lee side of a hill and lay down. And that's a little bit easier, but elk, I don't know. Maybe it's because I create my own lack of success about killing elk in the wind, because when the wind blows this hard, I just say, heck with it. This is time to get some work done. I'll go elk hunting when the wind dies down.
And that is, a luxury that you and I have that a lot of folks don't have. They get there 1 week and they're stuck with 3 or 4 days of wind or rain or whatever it is. And, you do have to kind of find a way to adapt and overcome.
Yeah. So rumor has it that you were just out helping with the hunt of the lifetime there.
Yeah, it actually the name of the organization changed this year. It's been Hunt of a Lifetime's the actual organization name, and it's a lot easier to say we're going on the Hunt of a Lifetime because it just makes sense. But the organization that we did it through this year is Outfitters for Hope.
Okay.
And same principle. They take out children with life-threatening illnesses, as well as the children who have lost a parent in the line of duty, whether it's military or first responder.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful idea. So you guys, you did that in Idaho this year?
We did. Yeah, we did it just last week. So
cool. And
had a great time. The young man we took out, his name was Shane, and Shane's 16, and he's killed one elk in his before this, and I comment every year that this is, I think, our 5th or 6th youth that we've taken out on these hunts, and every year I'm just amazed at the poise they have, at the maturity they have. They just jump into a group. I mean, when I was 16, you throw me into a group of 4 or 5 40-plus-year-old adult men out elk hunting, and I'm pretty intimidated. I keep to myself. They jump right in. They're part of all the conversations, and it's just, I can't say enough about how amazing these kids are.
Yeah, well, I'm so thankful that you're doing it. And you think about those kids probably have had life experiences as young people that have played their hand or forced their hand to maybe be more mature than I was when I was 16. No one would have wanted to take me on an elk hunt when I was 16.
Yeah. No, and I think that is a big part of it is, they've endured probably more challenge and hardship than most of us as adults have had to face and come through. And he was diagnosed with leukemia. It's been a handful of years ago, and he beat it, and he is healthy and strong. There wasn't a single time that I turned around that he wasn't right on my heels, and we hiked. I mean, that's the thing. You kind of have to adjust the hunt to the hunter. And sometimes we're literally packing these youth up the hill just from the ATV, just piggybacking them up 200 yards to get up to where we can get in a position to be able to see an elk or something. And so It is. I mean, it's every one of them are rewarding, but this one was fun because we did get out and kind of hunt our style and push it pretty hard. And Shane kept right up and had a great time.
That's so cool. And he got an elk?
He did get an elk. And it's these hunts always have some adversity.
Yep.
And whether it is, us having to carry him up the hill to get there, or not being able to find elk, or missing an elk, or, just the normal hunting things. But I think for us, when we're out there experiencing that with the company that we're in, it just reminds us how good we have it. And, that those challenges are nothing compared to what a lot of people are going through, especially these kiddos. So, he passed up several bulls. Most of them were broken this year, which we've never really experienced broken antlers in this area. But for whatever reason, we were finding broken pieces of antlers, and just about every mature bull we saw had broken tines. I think 3/4 of the mature bulls we saw had broken beams. The biggest bull we saw had his beam broke off on one side right behind the fourth, and then he was missing his second and third on one side. He was probably, a 330, 340 type bull, but with all the breaks, he wasn't that appealing to look at. And Shane passed on him, and then we called in a really pretty younger 6-point to like 20 yards, and I'm sitting there whispering to Shane, we're right in the wide open. The bull came in and I said, "What do you think?" He's like, "I think I'll pass." Whoa. And so I bugled at it, and it took like 3 more steps towards us right in the open, and great time. But then we had a little trouble finding elk. They just weren't bugling like they usually do out there this year. But we finally found some and got on top of them, and took forever for the bull to step out. And when he did, he stepped right in front of a cow, so we couldn't shoot. And he finally turned, quartering to us, and Shane got on him. So I think I want to take him, and 150 yards, and he shot. And he's a good shot. We shot before we went on the hunt, and he put 3 bullets just within an 1.5 inch area at 150 yards. So
cool.
Wasn't a question of that. So he shot, and I didn't hear the impact. And the bull took like 3 steps and turned broadside, and said, "Shoot him again." And so he shot, and I heard the impact that time. And then the bull took off running, and he shot again. Well, we went down. We couldn't find blood. We couldn't find tracks. We ended up bumping an elk right there. So we're pretty sure it was the bull. But we looked for, it was right before dark. We had maybe 15, 20 minutes of daylight where we could actually see good enough to pretend we were looking for tracks and blood. Mm-hmm. And we ended up 11:30 backing out of there and hadn't found it. But the awesome part about this hunt, aside from the kids that we get to hunt with, are the people who go on the hunt. And every year for our camp, it's been pretty much the same core group. It's been myself and Donnie, and then good friends Russ Meyer and Tony Mudd, mm-hmm. and then cameraman John's always there as well. But Russ and Tony, if I was ever in a situation where I was facing starvation and I was down to 1 arrow and a bow,
Yeah.
I would call one of those two and send them out to hunt for me, because they are just, and I mean, Tony is, I don't know how much I should brag on him because he is very humble, but he is one animal away from the North American Super Slam, Grand Slam, whatever, every North American animal with a bow.
Wow.
And just hard worker, blue collar, saves up his money and goes on 1 or 2 hunts a year, and is just, he got his Grand Slam of sheep with a bow. And anyway, just a very accomplished bow hunter. And to be able to spend a week hunting with men of that caliber on the hunting side, but then on the personal side, they're even better men.
Yeah.
And Tony was down in the draw, and he came up, when we met, and he's like, guys, I swear I heard that elk die. He's like, I heard 3 gasps. It was in the dark. It was in this direction. I've been through there a little bit, but I think we need to go back through there. And I, instantly I said, hey, if you said you heard an animal die, I know you've heard enough animals die that it's not even a question. That elk's somewhere on that hillside.
Yeah. So
we went down in the dark. There were 7 of us, and we gridded through that in the dark and couldn't come up with anything. And so, it's always hard to back out. Fortunately, it was fairly cool, and, we were confident that if we had to back out, we would find it the next morning, it'd be fine. And so I went back in at daylight the next morning, and Tony walked right down the ridge, and literally where he had put the pin, where he thought he had heard the sound, the bull was laying about 10 feet away from it. We'd been within probably 15 or 20 yards of it in the dark, but it was just that high chaparral, and, from down below, you had no chance of seeing it. And in the dark from up above, it was pretty unlikely to see. But
yeah,
we found it. And it's just one of those things. And Shane was completely poised when we got back to camp that night. He wasn't crushed at all. He was like, no, we'll find it. You guys are, he said, we'll find it. So I'm not even going to stress it. We're going to go in there and find it. And
yeah,
I think for a lot of us, it's easy to get discouraged and start doubting. And he was just a perfect example of optimism. And
cool. Always a lesson, or at least an observation of watching other people and how they handle their struggles and challenges. And remarkable that a 16-year-old would be that composed.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, even on the first shot, as he was lining up, and he had a tripod, bipod, whatever that he set the rifle on, and he took a stand. He was standing and had that rest. And I mean, he was going through breathing, and he'd put his finger up on the trigger and kind of put some pressure, not to shoot or anything, but just feel the trigger, and then he'd pull his finger off of it again. And I mean, it's just amazing to watch. I know when I was 16, it was close your eyes and jerk the trigger, and then say, well, the gun must be off or something, because I missed him at 100 yards. But yeah, you could tell his dad has spent some time helping develop him into, well, dad and mom, but into an awesome hunter and an awesome young man.
Cool. So what days were you guys hunting? And the reason I'm asking is I'm going to ask a follow-up question.
Yeah, we hunted the 6th through the 9th of October.
Okay. Was there any bugling action going on then?
There was. Yeah, it was. And typically out here, I mean, it's a controlled hunt area. It's, probably one of the more coveted tags in the state of Idaho, and the Fish and Game gives out 5 of those tags to youth with life-threatening illnesses. So it's a pretty special place to get to go and hunt. And one of the cool parts is it's a very high bull to cow ratio, a lot of mature bulls. So usually when we're out there that first week of October time frame, the elk are screaming their heads off. I mean, they're still rutting hard. The big bulls are pushing cows. There's all sorts of satellite bulls running around. And this year it was definitely more muted. There was bugling, but it wasn't the aggressive bugling. It was more of a location and get in. And a couple of the bulls we got into got pretty fired up, but for the most part, it wasn't the same experience from a bugling and rutting standpoint as what it's been in the past.
Well, since we did the last podcast and we talked about how this seemed to be a rather muted vocalization period compared to past years, how many people who had listened to that podcast sent us messages? Something, I'll paraphrase what most of them said was, wow, glad to know I wasn't the only one who was struggling to hear or get into some intense bugling.
Yep.
So I was just curious if it's just, so many times we confuse coincidence with, a pattern or a trend. And I don't know. Maybe until it happens again for another 2 or 3 years, I'm just going to call it coincidence. But right now, the coincidence has been rather remarkable.
Yeah. And I really thought, maybe it's the smoke that we had in September and the heat, and the full moon landed right in the middle of when it shouldn't have, and all these things. And so I was really hopeful that we would get a strong either late rut or second rut. And last year, Idaho rifle season opens on October 15th. Last year, we had a whole herd of elk screaming when Sam shot his bull on opening morning. And I was just kind of counting on that again. And I've been out the last 3 days scouting because opening day is tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And it's not the same this year. The 3 bulls in the last 3 days that I've heard bugle have been just a very weak, I think they're all young bulls, very weak bugles and one and done type of a thing. They'll answer once and then you can't get them to talk again. And if they do answer again, they're way up the mountain. Like they're just like they were in September pretty much.
Yeah. You're talking about all these broken tines, broken beams. Is that normal for that area where you see a lot of broken up ones?
We don't. I mean, there's a lot of bulls. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's a lot of fighting that goes on every year. Yeah. But we just, every once in a while we'll see one with a broken tine or something. But I don't know in the last 5 years out there if I've ever seen one with a broken beam. Mm-hmm. And I think I saw 4 of them with broken beams. Yeah. This year.
So the reason I ask is I shot a bull in Colorado on Saturday. He has 3 broken points. And when people saw pictures of it, a lot of people have commented, I can't believe how many broken beams and broken tines I've seen this year. Well, it's been a really dry year. And so in my mind, maybe somebody has done this research, or maybe again, it's just me trying to rationalize something. But I wonder if drought years have an impact on the density and strength of tines and beams and antlers.
Because it has to. And you see that, in especially the desert units like in Arizona and New Mexico, that, those elk seem to be broken up more than elk in other areas. And it has to be a quality of feed and nutrition on that specific year. And we were talking about that, we had a mild spring. We had a slow melt off. There was plenty of moisture in the spring as they were developing their antlers. And, it really didn't get hot and dry until mid-June, July, August, which, they only had a month or 6 weeks of finishing out. So you'd think that with a good early spring, it would have given them a good foundation. But yeah, there's something to it that is definitely, affected by that weather and the nutrition that's a result of the weather.
Yeah, and when I looked at where these are broke off, it's I've seen tines broken off that are when you look at the break, it's still a solid mass of just bone and calcium or whatever it is. These ones, all 3 of these where it was broke off, it was almost like a honeycomb sort of texture or pattern to where the break was. It's almost like I can't really explain it, but it was very remarkable. Every person not everyone, but so many people that I've talked to have said this same exact thing. And I'm looking at the antlers on this thing, and they just look a little different than any other broken antler I've seen. But
so they're more porous.
Yep. It looks almost like if you took a cross section of a honeycomb. I mean, it's really, it doesn't seem that dense. And this bull was an old bull, but he was only a 5-point. I mean, his ivories were flat. And they were,
Wow.
when the ivories, you know how when they get really worn, they get right down to the rings and the ivory gets a really dark color to it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, it was just, I don't know what the deal was with this guy. I saw him and he was so cooperative to the camera. I said, you know what? In 13 years of doing this, we've never had one that wanted to be on camera this bad. So I looked at him for 4 or 5 minutes at 120 yards while he was peeking through the trees at us. And I'm like, all right, he's only a 5-point and he's all broke up, but I just got to grant him his desire here of wanting to be on TV. So, but when you see a bull like that from far, and really all you can judge by is their antlers because he's standing in the shadows, you really don't know how big the body size is or whatever. I thought, well, this is a 3.5-year-old. Boom, shot him. We walk up there, and I get to looking at the body size. I'm like, holy cow, this thing's on some sort of bovine growth hormone or something. This thing. But he was definitely an old guy. And so I at the time and saw this breakage, I'm like, well, maybe just when they get older, maybe their antlers get brittle like that. I don't know. I don't have an answer to any of that. But as you were talking about all the broken tines and antlers you saw, that's what started going through my head, what I saw in Colorado, and then the people who've commented when they saw that picture of how many broken antlers they've seen this year. And
but then I had a good friend that hunted Arizona this year. And he sent me some pictures of bulls that they were hunting that had ginormous 4th and 5th tines. I mean, just the longest, and they weren't overly massive, and they were still intact, on October 1st. And so you'd think a place like Arizona would be affected by the dry weather, and the antlers would be more brittle, and it just wasn't the case for those ones. So it's kind of like one of those things, the coincidence thing that you may never be able to.
Maybe that's it. I'm just trying to shortcut some rationalization to a random pattern. And it's the problem with being an accountant. When you're a CPA, people come to you for advice and you feel like you got to have an answer to every question. Every time I observe something, it's like, well, I got to have an answer for that. So I better make one up. Oh, I know, drought. There we go. That's what I'll use. I'll just say it was a drought. So
drought, and you've got the list. I mean, you've got it prioritized. Even you got drought and all those things. But then, if those answers aren't being accepted, it's Obamacare, it's cameraman, it's I mean, you've wolves,
But this spot I hunted in Colorado, I've driven by there for years and years and years. And I've always said someday before I get too old to climb up to 12,000 feet, I'm going to go hunt that. And after burning 19 points in Colorado in 2016, I said, well, I'm never going to burn that many points on a unit you can draw with 2 or 3. So that's why it took me so long to finally draw this hunt. And so this year I had 3 points, which according to the Go Hunt Insider, every year for as long as I could find, that meant I was guaranteed this first rifle tag. And I drew, like expected. And it was, for me, it's kind of I don't know if it's a weird point in my hunting life, but even though I shot this bull that people are going to say, oh, that's a pretty run-of-the-mill bull, it was really a fun hunt. And I think because in my head, I dreamed about what does it look like there? Where are the elk when they're right at timberline? So the majority of the elk in this really high area we were hunting, they were treating the timberline almost like a clear cut, where you know how sometimes elk bed in the timber, they come out into the clear cut and feed, and then they go back into the timber. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what all these elk were doing. In the morning, you'd see them coming right above timberline. There's really good feed. and they'd be working their way into the timber. And then in the afternoon, they'd start working their way up the hill out into the open again above timberline. And so I've never shot an elk at that elevation. When we were sitting there and I glassed this one, we were sitting at just over 12,000 feet. I shot him at just over 11,600. And I've never shot an elk over 11. I think the highest one I ever shot before was in Arizona, which was at like 10,200, something like that. So it was fun to go and do it, having dreamed about it and considered it for years and years. And my point of bringing all that up is I think people get pretty locked into, I want to go hunt this glory unit or that, well-known area where there's big bulls here, big bulls there. But I look at how much satisfaction I got out of going to a place that, some people drew with 2 points this year. And I made it. Maybe this might be manufactured in my head, but I made it into a really interesting hunt. I was intrigued the whole time I was there by the landscape, by how the elk were using that landscape. Here, this is a beetle kill of beetle kills. Walking the trail we planned to take in there was so blown in with brush or with deadfall, beetle kill deadfall, that we couldn't do it. I had to turn around with the llamas, and I just gave up on that trail. So we had to make this 4-mile loop on a trail that they kind of keep open. And then seeing how the elk use that landscape with all that beetle kill and deadfall, it was a landscape I've never hunted before. And I was telling the camera crew as I was watching all this and reading the sign and seeing the elk, I said, this is one of these real learning experiences for me. I think, I've hunted all these states, all these different times a year, everything else. Well, I feel like I learned a ton in this hunt of putting myself in a place I'd never hunted before, in the type of habitat and terrain I've never hunted before, and at an elevation I'd never hunted before. And I got lucky and shot one, but I think wrapping up my long-winded point here, I think if people look at some of these other experiences that don't require a big pile of points to draw, you can still have a really cool hunt and have a lot of fun just being there, observing and learning throughout the hunt. But
absolutely. Yep.
It was fun. And they were bugling. You've heard me call before, Corey, so you know that I'm no threat to your world elk calling championship. But
you get it done. That's what's important.
Well, that's what I tell people. I don't know that calling elk necessarily requires that you sound perfect, because if it did, you may as well just take it away from me. And my camera crew, we're walking up the ridge the first day of scouting, and I get to this point, sun's coming up, and they look at me and they're like, well, what are we going to do? I said, well, I think if there is a hot cow out here, every bull on the mountain would come to her because there aren't many hot cows left. So I'm going to do this really whiny cow call. And I was just kind of making that up because I'd seen Corey Jacobson do that before.
Whatever.
I'm going to do it just like Corey does. I'm going to do one really soft call without my bugle tube up. And then I'm going to break into like a sequence of 3 or 4 really whiny, high-pitched cow calls through my bugle tube. So I did my best Corey Jacobson impression. And when I got done, a bull just started screaming, and he was running down the mountain, and he had love on his mind. And my crew looks at me like, man, you're pretty good at this. I'm like, no, this guy just, he wants, he knows it's going to be a long, cold winter. So he was coming at us so far. He came from like 500 or 600 yards right out in the open, right to us. And last thing you want to do is have him smell you. So we had to take off running away from him so that we didn't mess him up for the next day. So point being, on October 9th at 12,000 feet in Colorado, the elk were very responsive to calling. which I think we get that question a lot of, should I waste my time calling in October?
Yep.
And
I don't think it's a waste of time.
Yeah. And the one I ended up shooting, I cow called him in, and like I was telling you before we got on the mics here, that guy was bugling, and we had about 100-yard opening, and we thought, well, he'll just work his way out into this opening, and he wouldn't. He's on the ridge across the little opening, a ridge that maybe had 100 feet of elevation gain, and we could just hear him up there ripping at it. And I told the crew, I said, if it was archery season, I would never do this, because I know I can't get him to cross this meadow, but I bet you he'll come to the edge of that meadow, and with a 300 Win Mag, 100 yards that's a doable shot. Now with my bow, no. So he got done with a bugle, and I did a couple little whiny cow calls, and here he come, man. He was just letting the world know that I'm coming. But as quick as he got to the edge of the timber, he shut up, and he stood there back in the timber looking like, where's that cow? Where is that cow? I can't see her. And obviously, if I would have had an archery tag, I would have never done this. I would have moved back into the timber on my side of the clearing to force him to come over there. But he stood there for quite a while. And then I just had to do a couple more cow calls before he'd take a couple more steps and a couple more steps. And finally, he stepped out right on the edge of the trees, and he just kept looking. I mean, he was locked in on us to the point where I think he knew within 2 inches of where my mouth was. He was that good at detecting where the sound was coming from. But I don't think he knew that rifle season had opened that morning. So,
no, that's a great point that I try to stress when you're calling elk, primarily for archery season, but anytime. When an elk gets to that point where they can see where the calls are coming from, and they can, like you said, they can pinpoint with amazing accuracy. And when they can get to that point where they can see where the call's coming from and they don't see an elk, they get pretty nervous, or at least cautious. And, that's that normal hang-up we talk about, that 100-yard hang-up that elk do. That's usually the reason why, is because they can see where the caller is at, and they don't see an elk. And I'm not saying they necessarily see the caller, but they want to see an elk before they come in. And so that setup and the location of the caller is critical to be able to call that elk in close.
Yeah, if I was archery hunting, I would have crossed this 100-yard opening and got on the edge of the timber so that he could have just stayed in the timber to look for me, rather than, because I knew the way, as much noise as I'm making with the cow calls, I'm wearing orange. I got 2 camera guys with me wearing orange. We're not faking him out. He's not going to walk out into this wide open area. But I've seen him enough times stand just 5 yards back in the timber in archery season. Yeah. And like you said, if they get to a point where they think they can see the source of where that should be coming from, man, they just take on a whole, they go from being this super excited, crazy, out of their mind elk to all of a sudden super cautious. Like, wait a second.
Go quiet for no reason.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot. I had this bull, and he was just fired up, and he got to 100 yards and just went quiet for no reason. I'm like, well, there's always a reason. Guarantee there's a reason.
Yeah. So I was giving some play-by-play to the camera as this was happening. I'm like, now I would not do this in archery season, so don't think I'm an idiot. But I do have a rifle in my hand. So the other thing that is kind of a bit of a lesson, and maybe I'll show it to you, and maybe you'll add this to the University of Elk Hunting course. But, a lot of times you only have a few days to hunt. Like, we had to cut this hunt. It's a 5-day hunt. We had to cut it short by 2.5 days because I fly to New Mexico tomorrow. So I added 2 days on the other end to scout. And my point of this is the value of scouting and patterning things while you are there. Because I had all these ideas that could have been potential options and opportunities of, maybe they're doing this, maybe they're doing that. By having 2 days to scout, by the time season opened the first morning, we had dialed in what the pattern should be, and it worked. And so there's that lesson. The other lesson is, I always say, in rifle season anyhow, there's the opening day opportunity, and then once the shooting starts, there's everything after opening day. And so if you're pressed for time, sometimes it's good to take a couple days to scout and roll the dice, have all your chips out there on the opening day pattern, because it's what you scout those 2, 3, 1, 2 or 3 days before season. You can just about bet that the same thing's going on opening morning, and that's exactly how it worked out for us. So
that's great. Yeah, and I'm in the middle of that right now because our season opens tomorrow, and the kiddos all have rifle tags here, and so I've been out trying to scout elk, and we did it last year as well, but I've got 2 bulls located just by bugles the last 2 mornings, and that's a difference too, the morning versus the evening. You get there the night before the hunt opens and find elk, they might not be there the next morning on opening morning. So having a couple mornings to see what they're doing on the morning hunt can be really important. And because of that, I've got a good game plan for tomorrow. And like you said, tomorrow they'll probably still be bugling like they are this morning. Just 1 or 2 bugles, enough to locate them. One of them's next to a clear cut. They're coming out and feeding in the clear cut. So if we're on the edge of the clear cut at daylight, we should have a good chance. The other one, I don't know exactly what he's doing in the morning, but he's bugled the last 3 mornings I've been there and one of the evenings. So I'm pretty sure he's just hanging out right there. But once that shooting starts on opening morning, they're different animals. They probably won't bugle that much, especially anywhere close to a road, and their habits are going to change. So
yeah, I tell people the deck gets reshuffled after the shooting starts. So get ready for a completely different elk the next day than what you had. And I think where we were at, maybe it was a little bit different because it took us 6 hours to hike in there, and then to our camp. And then from our camp, it's another couple mile hike to where we were hunting. We also we get this question a lot, and we've covered it before on the podcast, of where do you set up your camp relative to where you found the elk. And my camera crew was asking me that question. They're like, why are we camping here?
They don't listen to the podcast?
I don't think they do. They listen to podcasts about race cars and video games and whatever. We actually did a segment that hopefully someday we can refer people to a YouTube video about selecting this camp. And we selected camp about 600 feet lower in elevation because, like we've talked about before, the morning and nighttime thermals are carrying your scent downhill. And I don't want to camp up on top of the ridge and have my scent blowing in there all night. And to the first spot where we got into a lot of elk sign and called that one in the first scouting morning was about a mile. And I want to be about at least a mile from where the elk are. And, how long did it take to walk a mile? Half hour, 30 minutes, 40 minutes? I don't know. But so there was a lot of thought that went into where, why I was going to camp there. And it all worked out. Because it all worked out, I'm like, oh, boy, I really got this figured out. Now watch, I'm going to New Mexico. I think I got this all figured out. We won't see an elk. Our sweepstakes winner will be, hey, I thought you were supposed to know what the heck you were doing. But so I don't want to confuse luck with skill either. So
yeah.
But there were a lot of lessons that we tried to take the stuff you and I talk about and apply it to this hunt. And we put it actually in all the video of, okay, here's why we're doing what we're doing. You hear us talk about this. Let's see if it works out. Well, I don't know if the planets aligned or whatever, but every time we do that, it worked out. So.
And I found myself in archery season this year stopping and thinking, what would I say to do in the online course? Like, what, referring back, I had to re-educate myself on a few things because whether you haven't experienced it for a while or had to rely on it. But yeah, I mean, I literally thought, okay, I'm trying too hard here. What what did I say to do in the online course? And sometimes it works, and sometimes it's just a matter of, hey, the elk aren't here, or they aren't responding, or they aren't cooperating, and
in a drought year like this, and this is something that might come up to other people, but so we go in 2 days early. We set up our camp on this little lake, and it's the only water. It's the only place in this really dry year that has enough water for our llamas, or if you were hunting on horses or whatever. So we got our llamas staked out. We take all of our orange panniers and hang them in the trees so nobody's going to shoot one of our llamas, because down at the trailhead, there's a sign that says, elk hunters, beware, there are moose here. Every year people shoot moose thinking they're elk. I'm thinking, wait, I got 4 llamas there. So anyhow, we camp there because it's the only place we know we got reliable water for us and the llamas. And here come some other guys and set up camp the next day. Right. I mean, very, very close to us. But they were good guys. They had horses, and they needed the same thing our llamas needed, and they stayed away from us. We stayed away from them, just waved, and they went and hunted a different direction, and we hunted another direction. And it was one of those times where your first impression is, what are these people doing, man? They're crowding us. But those guys showed some, what I thought were really great, if you want to call it manners or etiquette about public land. I think they saw which direction we were hunting, and they decided to hunt the opposite direction. So
that's what usually happens when people know me. They hunt by me like, yeah, he's going that way. Let's go the other direction. He's going to scare all the elk and probably push them over to us. So.
But I will admit, I was worried at first that, is this going to be one of those foot race kind of things? We're all hunting the same area. Who's going to get there? And it worked out really good. I hope they shot their elk. We never did see them. They were out hunting all the daylight hours, just like we were. But me and the camera crew were talking about how cool it was that we lucked out, and the people that we bumped into had really good public land etiquette. At least the etiquette we follow is, if you're there first, guess what? You get it. And we're not going to come and plop on top of you or try to skirt around your edges or whatever. And I wish I could have met him in person, other than just waving to him across the pond there, and thanked him, because it could have been a different outcome. And
totally,
when you hunt public land, I guess that's one of the comments we often get too, is, what is the etiquette of public land? Well, I guess everyone has their different ideas on it. My idea is whoever's there first is kind of who gets it.
Yep. And I like to talk, if I don't get there first, I like to go and talk to the person who's there first and say, hey, you're here first. Which direction are you planning on going? I want to make sure we don't mess you up, and just let me know where you're going, and we'll go a different direction and work together that way.
Yeah. So we did see 3 guys had 2 llamas. We saw them out there, and I was thinking to myself, all right, they're this far back here. I hope only one of them has a tag, because right now they got their llamas so loaded with camp gear. I don't know how they're getting an elk out of here, let alone 3 of them.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to start asking you questions about llamas, but we did a podcast on that, and I've got a phone call with Bo this afternoon. So
do you?
I'll say, we're going to take llamas in on our hunt next week. And
okay. Well, these, I will say this, there's no way I would have shot an elk. So from the trailhead to our camp was every bit a 6-hour hike. And then another 2 miles from that, there's no way I would have shot an elk back there if I wouldn't have had llamas. Because if that would have been a solo hunt and I shot an elk back there and I'm making three or four round trips, I'd still be there today packing elk meat out.
Yep. No, and that's what we're looking at. It's using llamas is giving us confidence, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it, to be able to go in where we're going to go. And it's, we're going in about 8 miles to where we're going to camp, and then it's rugged and tough country in there. And, we'll probably have to pack the elk to camp.
Yeah.
But yeah, just having llamas gives us the opportunity to get an elk out that 8 or 9 miles that we otherwise just wouldn't be able to do, wouldn't consider doing.
Yeah. Well, I will admit, when I saw those guys pull up with their horses, they look pretty fresh for having just ridden into that camp compared to how exhausted I felt having hiked in there. So I was looking at those llamas like, is there any way I can rig these up with a one on each side, put them in a yoke and I could sit between them or something? Part of me getting old and lazy. I don't know. Do you hunt areas with a lot of blowdown, Corey?
Yeah, every once in a while. Not like Colorado. I think Colorado's the king of blowdowns, but yeah, it's no fun.
One of the things that was remarkable, and again, this is me looking at my aerial imagery, and it all looks the same. It's beetle kill after beetle kill and all these blowdowns. Well, you get there, and it's interesting to see where the elk have found these little trails over time that they navigate this blowdown. And it puts them in pretty tight corridors. They don't use the entire hillside of blowdown. They're using these little trails because you go and you find nothing. It's like there aren't any elk here. And then you come across one of their trails. It's like, my goodness, this looks like a freeway. So we use those trails through the blowdowns as kind of the path to lead us to where we thought the elk would be. And it worked remarkably well. It was such a feast or famine. You're busting through it, stepping over it. It's like, well, there aren't any elk in here. I haven't seen a track, no droppings, no rubs. And then all of a sudden you get to these little areas where they've been, over time creating their new trails through the blowdown. And it's just unbelievable how much elk sign is there. So we kind of use that to our advantage. I don't know if that was a fluke, and next time I go to Colorado or go to a blowdown area and I try to do the same thing, it's going to turn out to be a big dud. But it was just something that struck me, seeing how they use the landscape now that the blowdown has really altered how they can navigate across that landscape.
Yep.
So lots of, I don't know, I could talk about that hunt forever just because I'd never hunted in a spot like that and felt like I learned a lot. So
that's cool.
Probably a more of a comment about how little I knew before I started rather than how much I know when I finished.
Yep. And that's, I think we have to approach every hunt like that, man, if we decide to stop learning and just rely on what's always worked, I think we'll find ourselves pretty disappointed pretty quickly because, there are habits that we have as hunters. There are styles of hunting, methods of hunting, all those things that we kind of, we lock into and we repeat that. But when it comes to actually finding elk and calling elk and things like that, it's so important to stay versatile and, go out and try what's worked in the past. But when it doesn't work, don't keep trying it for 7 straight days and then go home and say, the elk just weren't bugling this year.
Yeah.
Well, they might not have been bugling very good this year, but you could still find ways to hunt and kill elk. And so, I do hear that, people be like, oh, we set up camp and hunted the same canyon for 8 days and never even saw a track, never even heard a bugle. It's like, okay, this is on you, not on the elk, not on the circumstances, because I do not sleep in the same location for 2 nights if I haven't seen an elk or heard an elk. And
well, for me, it's just fun to go and do different things in different places. And earlier you said something about how lucky you and I are that we get to hunt a lot. And I agree, 100% lucky. And the other luxury it gives me is if I experiment with some new idea or some new strategy or tactic, I'm not risking my entire season by experimenting. Whereas the person who only has a week, they're not going to spend too many days trying goofy experiments because that's their whole season. So I'm cognizant of the fact that you and I are blessed in getting to do this. But when I do some experiments and they work out, I like to try share them anyhow. People can take from them what they want. Probably take from it of this guy doesn't know his buck from third base. That's probably true, but
fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah. The other thing, if you live in Colorado, the talk every place we stopped and people who knew who we were or recognized us, the discussion came up about the ballot initiative for wolves in Colorado. On election day, please go and exercise your right to vote. And if you live in Colorado, you have a ballot initiative that tries to take wildlife management from the professional scientists and biologists and put it in the hand of the uninformed electorate. So I hope people will vote against that.
Yep. Yeah, and I've coincidentally, I've been listening to the Amy Cohen Barrett testimonial hearings for the Supreme Court. And just as I've been driving, I have it on satellite radio, and it's amazing to me how polarized our country's become and how completely, two different directions that we're going. And there's just so much at stake. In Colorado, obviously, that's a huge wildlife issue, but just in general, in our nation, and those who decide policy and everything, I think we're at a pretty important crossroads, and there's a lot at stake that we all love to do.
Yeah. Well, RMEF just contributed $300,000 towards helping defeat that ballot initiative. I think it's called Proposition 114. And that came up on some of the social media and other platforms that I have. And I was surprised how some people were like, that's a waste of money. Okay. If you feel that way, I guess so. I don't feel that it's a waste of money. I think it was more of a, hey, it's a foregone conclusion. Why throw money down a rat hole? Well, for me, I'm glad the Elk Foundation has taken a stand on it and saying, you know what, we're going to put our money out there. We're going to activate our membership, because science-based wildlife management is what has been the foundational building block for this model that has recovered wildlife in this country. And I would be disappointed in any group that said, well, we'll just, we'll give up on that principle of science-based management and just let it be political-based management. No. If I'm going down swinging, man. So I don't know. It was definitely on the mind of a lot of people down there. I sure hope that Colorado comes to their senses collectively and says, we're being sold a bill of goods here.
Yeah.
So you and I live in states where we can speak with firsthand experience that what you get told about this process and what you actually get in this process are two different things.
Yep. Well, and just as an example, the area that we hunted, we spent a few days in archery season hunting in there, and we found a pocket of elk. I mean, it was good. We got in there, and the elk were bugling. They were acting like elk, and everything was good. And on the last morning that we were in there, we found a solo fresh wolf track in the bottom of the drainage. And I thought, one wolf's not enough to mess anything up. It's by itself. Hopefully it's just passing through. It's the only track I saw in there all season. Well, just what's it been, 2 weeks now, there was a dead cow alongside the road. and some people were out skinning it. Well, come to find out, a wolf had killed it the night before, right alongside the main county road. And there have been 4 or 5 confirmed wolf kills of cattle just along that 1 mile, 2 mile stretch along the mountain range there in the last couple of weeks. In my scouting the last 3 days, I haven't seen a fresh elk track and haven't heard a bugle in that drainage.
Wow.
And so it just, it's so, we live it, we see it. And if you have an opportunity to hopefully make your voice heard and vote, if you care about wildlife and our role in managing wildlife and conserving wildlife, stay away from letting wolves into your state.
Yeah, and please continue to support those groups that are, I would say, carrying a lot of our weight by trying to continue this process of science-based management rather than letting it, what do they call it, ballot box biology. So hopefully you'll give RMEF some of your time, consideration, thought, money, whatever, for the fact that they're out there trying to do what they think is best for elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. But going through some of the Elk Talk podcast responses, which is the contact us button out at elktalkpodcast.com.
Yep.
You run that part of it. So I always have to make sure I got it right. I always ask the question. People are like, Randy, you've asked Corey this question 50 times. Don't you know the answer yet? But a couple of the questions that came in the last month have been about hunting elk in non-migratory areas, the plains, the foothill country, the big mesa country of the Southwest, and how all the things we talk about, do they even apply in places like that? And I guess my first stab at it is elk are elk. They still have the basic needs of food, water, breeding, sanctuary. So they're going to use those flatter, less migratory landscapes in some way, a slightly different way, but they're going to use them in ways that help them satisfy their needs at whatever time of year it is with the least risk to predation and hunting pressure. I know that's a pretty generic answer to what they're asking, but there's really not a one answer for all situations or all locations. I mean, elk live in such varied landscapes and varied habitats that you can't say that what you do in northern Idaho is going to be the same as what you do in eastern Colorado, or the Front Range of Colorado, or the foothills of the prairie break country of Montana. You just got to understand elk, what they need, and try to anticipate what they're going to do on your landscape.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe I'm making it too simple.
No, I think we make it too complicated, and that's been something that I've stressed for a long time. Is I don't want to share an exact tactic necessarily. What I'd rather do is help people understand the why.
The process.
I can give you the tactic that works in some situations, or maybe even the majority of situations. But when you understand why that tactic works in those situations, you'll be able to find a tactic that works in the other situations because you understand why it works. And, whether that's a food source, whether that is finding the cows during the rut, whether that is dealing with pressure, whatever it is, if you understand how an elk reacts and why an elk does what it does in each of those different situations, you can come up with a tactic or a strategy or a method to hunt that elk and be successful.
We should have just recorded that for a podcast, because that is the answer to a lot of the questions we get. Is think about what you know of elk and apply that to where the elk are and what they're doing at the time you're hunting them. and build your strategy and tactics from there, rather than to think what Corey might tell you about central Idaho in September is the same tactic to use in the high country of Colorado in the middle of October. It's never that way. I wish it was that easy. It'd be like golf if it was that easy.
Is golf easy?
Yes. I mean, for me it is, because I kick it, throw it, move it to a different lie, whatever. Someday some golfers are gonna take me to the woodshed and light me up or something, because that's my default answer is always, well, if it was easy, it'd be golf. It's elk hunting. This is real work here. This requires some effort, some skill, some strategy. Golf, just kick it out in the fairway and give her another whack. So you taking the kids out tomorrow?
We are, yeah. I've got, with the school schedule the way it is, they go in person one day and then they have the next day off. And as long as they have their homework done, they're good. So
who's going tomorrow?
Jessie is primary shooter tomorrow morning.
Oh, okay.
Because she has volleyball practice tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, okay.
And then Sam will be primary tomorrow evening. And I think both of them will go in the morning, just in case we get lucky and happen to find 2 elk in the same area. But yeah. So we're going out this afternoon and shooting the rifles, making sure that everything's dialed, which, this is not me saying we waited until the day before season. We've been out a handful of times, but we're going out the day before season for a final check on everything, make sure they're both comfortable. And
yeah. Well, if Sam kills a bull like he shot last year, wasn't it on his birthday or something that he shot one last year?
His birthday is October 13th and opening day is October 15th. So
okay.
He always says he wants to go elk hunting for his birthday. So
wow. Well, he got a heck of a birthday. Was it last year or the year before that he shot that really
last
nice
year?
one?
Yeah, shot a nice 6-point.
Huh. Well, I hope that his sister shoots one this year. Yeah. Nothing personal.
She shot one with her bow last year, but she's never killed an elk with a rifle. So.
Oh, well. This is her year.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. So if when you do this, and then next week you said you're going in deep and steep, you scared me away when Bo called me. Actually, Bo called me. Did I tell you this?
No.
Like, what does Corey mean when he says deep and steep? I said, you don't want to send your llamas with him.
You didn't really tell him that.
I did tell him that. Yeah.
Maybe that's why he's not calling me back.
Maybe. But wait, so because you're going back further, do you think some of the same tactics, or how would I say this? Do you think the elk will be a little more normalized in their behavior because of how far you're going back? And that season's already been open a few days versus if you were not going that far back. Do you think that they would have changed their behavior because of hunting pressure?
Totally. And that's what we're banking on. We actually are going a week earlier than we had initially planned. And hopefully it's far enough back in, and then it's steep enough once you get back in there that I don't think we're going to have to worry about a bunch of pressure. I think we're going to be able to climb up 2,500 feet in elevation from camp and find pockets of elk that will still bugle. And I'm not concerned about calling them in. If I can just get one to answer and know it's there, then we can make a plan, whether that's sit there and wait all day for him to come out on an open ridge across from us in the afternoon, whether that's to get into the timber if he's, bugling really good. But we can make a plan at least, and it's not just going out and wandering around like I used to do when I rifle hunted, just wander and hope to see something and then shoot it. We can still use our bugle tubes to locate elk, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys have a great hunt. I just can't believe how lucky we are to live in a country where we have all this public land and the average person can go elk hunting. As I was walking out in Colorado, I turned to the camera And I told you guys, turn those cameras on. I was so excited about the fact that I live in the greatest country in the world. And I'm here in this amazing public land, and I've got a llama packing an elk out for me. I mean, even if it wasn't with llamas, just the fact that we get to do this. And, you're talking about taking your kids out, and then you and Donnie are going, and I'm taking a sweepstakes winner to New Mexico, and ... There are just so many reasons to be thankful for all that we have as opportunity here. Go take advantage of it, I guess, is my point.
Absolutely.
And my wife just looked at me like, could you take any more advantage of it? Sorry, honey. She just gave me a smile. She's making homemade pumpkin bars with cream cheese frosting on them. And then she hears me bragging about how much hunting I get to do. I am so spoiled. I can't believe. You ever wonder when your wife is going to get rid of you, when she's going to someday get smart and realize she could do so much better?
Yeah.
See, you're trying to think about that. So your wife listens to the podcast. That's why you're afraid to say this.
She doesn't anymore.
Oh, no? Okay.
No, I think she's heard enough. When we were in Montana Utah last summer at the Total Archery Challenge, we did those 2 live Q&A podcasts. And unbeknownst to me, she slipped in the back and was sitting there the whole time, and I didn't know. And I really don't think I exaggerate anything or make anything up, but she questioned me on a couple things, and we started talking about marriage, and that was your fault, because you're the one that brings up marriage and starts giving advice, and then you turn to me and ask me and put me on the spot, and I was off base with something I said in that podcast, because she definitely brought it up, and I don't think she's listened to a podcast since.
Well, I saw her sitting in the dark corner behind us when I decided we'd switch gears to marriage advice. I thought you knew she was there.
Didn't.
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to set you up like that.
I don't know what it was. It was something about, me watching chick flicks in the off season or something to gain brownie points for going hunting or something. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, you said the rest of the year I'll do whatever she wants me to do, no matter how much I hate it. I'll act like I love it.
I did. I had more honeydews this year than I've ever had before. I did that whole paver patio sidewalk out of the flat flagstone, and then I built an awesome little greenhouse shed, and then built the chicken coop off the side of that, and I've been getting. And I've got a lot of firewood already, and so yeah, just. I'm trying to at least recognize how much of a burden she takes on with me being gone. That's certainly not saying that I do anything when I'm there, but she carries a heavier load during elk season for sure, and so hopefully me giving back in those ways at least acknowledges that I'm aware of that.
Yeah. You're a good man, Corey. I don't care what the rest of the town says about you. You're a good man. I just hope my wife doesn't listen to this podcast, because after what you just said there, she'll hold me to a much higher standard.
You'll be splitting firewood and shoveling snow and doing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I'll probably just put my toe on the splitting maul and chop it off and say, see, that's what happens when you ask someone to split firewood, to chop the toe off. That's how I'll get out of that. Kind of like how I get out of Christmas decorations, get out of mowing the lawn, You'll reach a point somewhere in your life where you adopt my theory of pay the man. Pay someone to mow that lawn. Pay someone to do. I only got so much time to hunt and fish in my remaining days, and I'm not going to spend it doing those kind of things. But I admire you that you still got the energy and the fortitude to do it. I don't, and I admit it. So, but well, I think we've kept people long enough. I'll be interested to hear the update from Idaho. I'll give you the New Mexico update. when we get back, and then you give me the Idaho update for you, the family, and what you and Donnie
sounds like a deal. With. Yeah, we'll be out of pocket for the next 10 days or so, but.
Hey, and guess what came in yesterday in the mail?
Caramel Conquer protein performance bar.
Oh, how did you know?
They came in my mail too.
I don't dare tell my camera crew that I get that many Mountain Op performance bars, because I each let them have a couple of them, and they've been jonesing pretty hard. They're like, "Do you have any more of these?" And they haven't asked me since they came in yesterday, so I did not lie when I said, no, we're all out. But I'm not telling them we got a bunch more. And like I told you, they don't listen to the podcast probably, so I can say it on the podcast. But
yeah, that's I stole a couple from Donnie last week because I was out and mine showed up, and I'm restocked, and I've got 4 boxes of them, so that's 40 bars. I'm good for at least 20 days. That's if I don't share with anyone. No, I don't. But at least I don't think I do. But mine sure went quickly last time. So,
yeah, I don't share. I'm not very good at sharing it. When you come, I tell my crew, look, you guys are hired with the expectation you know how to survive out in the woods. I'm not here to feed you and babysit you. So don't be eating my food, man.
Yep.
Just don't stay away. And so I don't ask them for their food. I don't expect them to ask me for my food. If they want some Mountain Ops performance bars like they're all asking for, they can go to mountainops.com and use promo code Elk Talk and save some money, and they can buy their own. And they put it on their expense report, so I'm going to end up paying for them anyhow, one way or the other. So I guess maybe I should just buy them.
Well, I don't think you can get the bugleberry igniter enduro anymore at Mountain Ops, but I think I heard. Don't quote me on this necessarily, but I heard there was a little bit left over after the September promotion, and they may be opening that window up again at some point, and we'll let people know when that is, because they literally just bring in bugleberry for September, and it's their most popular flavor. So maybe it's popular just because they make it so limited, but it
maybe.
So we'll keep you posted on that one.
All right. Well, I've never tried it. I'll have to log on. Like I said last time, I don't want to be a tightwad accountant, so I pay full retail, man.
You got to use the Elk Talk promo code at least.
All right. Well, that'd be kind of like me using my promo code with some of my other partners. It's like, I just don't feel right about that. I'll pay full retail, but oh well. But anyhow, good luck out there, Corey. Yeah, I'll try my best since I'm not the one shooting. The first elk I see, I'm going to tell the sweepstakes winner, boy, that is a big one for this unit right there. Shoot that one. He's close to the road and slightly uphill from the road. He's probably going to be suspicious of my motives. Well, good luck. Thanks for being here, folks. And I don't know when we'll get a chance to catch up again. Probably sometime later this
Hopefully
month.
Right about the time we get back from our hunts. I know I'll be winding down, so I'll be in the office a little more, and we can.
Yeah, good. Well, you can do all these podcasts then, because my November, I think I'm home about 3 days.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what my wife said. Phew, it's good. He's only home for 3 days this November. She's over there smiling and laughing. She knew. I am so lucky that she puts up with me, Corey. Thank you, Cam. I appreciate you putting up with me. She said something. I got my headphones on. I couldn't hear what it was, but I'm sure it was sweet and pleasant. But all right. Well, let's go before I get divorced.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well,
Thanks,
good luck. We'll catch you on the next one.